Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Damn Parenting, your English speaking parenting podcast from Amsterdam, the Netherlands. As always, we are your hosts, Eva and
Maren.
Today, we are actually going to be proceeding next week's celebration. Next week, from Monday the 18th to Sunday the 25th of March 2024, it's Neurodiversity Week. Neurodiversity has become a little more popular, I think, nowadays. What do you think? People are more aware.
It's definitely been a term that I have personally seen pop up, I think, over the last 2 years, 1.5 years, and that definitely noticed that it's become a topic of conversation more, which is great because anything that has not been on the table and is on the table now adds value and adds information and takes away insecurities and anxiety from people who are affected by it. So I think it's great that it's becoming more and more a topic that people are aware of.
Currently, it's estimated that about 15 to 20% of the world are neurodivergent. So I think just quickly, neurodiversity actually describes the variation of a human experience in the world. It's nothing like, we can talk about the spectrum, but the thing is there's a massive variety on this spectrum. And so it's basically about your interaction and your experience within the world, within school, within work, or even your social relationships. And so as Damn Parenting, since we saw those workshops, and it is a case of in Amsterdam as international families, it is kind of hard to find support groups of people who can actually help support us. So we really wanted to raise awareness of a group we found. We actually wanted to bring them on and to help explain to us what it's like in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, and also to share more about the support groups that they provide. So with that, I'd like to actually bring on Claudia Carter. Hi, Claudia.
Hi, Eve and Maren. Thank you for having me.
Would you like to give us a bit of background about yourself?
Yeah, so very quickly, I'm from Chile. I live in Europe for 15 years. I live 8 years in France, where I discovered working with the parenting field, working with families of different backgrounds. And that was my first approach to parentality and positive communication that I found at that moment. And since then, it's my red light to go for it with positive communication. And then I moved to the Netherlands, I think already 8 years ago. And my dream was always working with children. And I made my own way to work with children. So I did some studies in Montessori method. Today I work as autism educator and family counselor. In Amsterdam, I work one-to-one with children with autism in a small place in Amsterdam. I have a small group of 8 children with an important level of autism. So they are mainly nonverbal and they need support in daily tasks and the whole development process too. Working with these children at this place and also with some families at home, I realized that they are maybe more isolated than other parents because they don't have the same challenges as other parents with their children. And that got me to, wow, I really would love to support parents in this journey because it's a very magic journey and intense also. As you are already parents, you know that your journey is already intense, but can be a little more, let's do it together journey kind of thing. And I met this mom in Amsterdam. Her name is Sarah, and she runs this place called A Different Story in Jordan. And we connect. And she had the same dream, create a place to support parents with children with rare disease or disabilities. So we put in contact, and since last year, July, we are running this parent support group for parents of neurodivergent children every month. This year is the same thing. This year I'm doing it twice, so A Different Story and Monty's World, and so it's twice a month. And the aim is just to create a safe space for parents of neurodivergent children to meet, share joys and sad moments or difficult moments, find guidance, find support, and also just know that they are not alone.
It's the most important thing, the whole feeling of I'm not alone. There is other people there that have maybe walked the walk already, so I can take some notes and be like, okay, these are the obstacles to prepare for, or even just sharing them to figure out a way to tackle this together. One question I have is, what stage do the parents usually get out and search help for if they discover they have a neurodivergent child? So what can parents expect? Like, can they come with any child's age, or do you have a tendency where it's usually parents that have children around this age, or is it totally mixed?
I think I can say it can be a mix because in my case, I work with children with important level of autism. And maybe you can see that since very little, because they may be not asking to their names or rolling or standing up or the first word. And in other cases, you may see that late.
Yeah.
For example, in my case, I found out I had ADHD very late. I just keep going. So I think it's depend on the child. Every child is unique. We are all unique. So it's depend on how your challenges are.
If anyone's listening, asking, "Oh, my child is already this age, it might be too late because it's for parents with younger children." So it's basically anyone who feels they need support at any stage can come and get help in these support groups, right?
Yeah, for any parent who's looking for guidance, support, or just connect with other parents, because I met some parents that they just create this connection with parents in the same journey. When I say the same journey, I mean with neurodivergent children after 10 years. So that means that the parents spend most of the whole age of the child alone, and that is wow. So it's any age. If your child if you find out, if you think maybe you may also have ADHD or autism or anything, also you can go and share, because as an adult, you also have your own experience living with this, and you can reflect with other people about that and maybe understanding more how the child may be reacting and why. So any parent can come and join us to share, to learn. Because even though I have my own challenges, I work with children, but I learn so much from parents. And I also, I have my experience that I also am very happy to share with them. So it's a community support space.
Can you help us with the diagnosis process here in the Netherlands? Can you shed any light on how parents can go about diagnosing them if they have a sense of there is something different?
For example, if you have a baby, 1 or 2, 3 years old, you may see if the baby is following I'm going to use the word normal, even though I don't like the word, like the process of development. If it's not the case, the parent can go directly to the GP and express, okay, I think that my child is not answered to his name, is not rolling, and maybe the doctor is going to say, okay, maybe we have to do some tests about the developmental history of the child. If it's a baby, we have to maybe wait a little more to see the milestones. If it's a child of 4 or 3 years old and he's able to answer questions, to give you a verbal answer, all right, the child also may have to do some test or answer some questions. If it's not the case, it's going to be all in the parents, and maybe caregivers will have to support the doctor in that process. If the child, for example, it's 6, 7 years old and it's at school, teachers can also see that. And sometimes also teachers may see behaviors that the parents doesn't see at home. For example, I'm sitting at school and I'm standing up, I'm moving, I'm interrupting my classmate. Those things, maybe the parent doesn't aware because it's another setting. So also sometimes teachers can give this information to the psychologist at school, and by then they will inform the parents, and then the parents will say, okay, let's go to the doctor. So it's all start in that small group first. And then once the doctor has all the information and connection with the parents and the child, they may start thinking, okay, we have to do this test depending on the child. Again, I think there may be a pattern test, but as I see the difference of different challenges between any child, they may answer differently, because I can speak, I'm going to give you an answer. I can write, I'm going to write the answer. So it's depending on any child. And once they have all the results, it's nice if the parents can find a good team to work together. So the GP, speech therapy if it's necessary, a physiotherapy if it's necessary. For example, I'm a practitioner in DIR floor time, which is a relationship-based method. So we work in each individual differences of the child. So it's going to be very deep and it's very positive. So for me to connect with the child, I'm going to start going into following his lead, going at his pace, first making the emotional connection, and then I will go further in his development, finding then the right team that for your child, a team where the parents feel listened, supported, that they can also share what they feel is good for the children, because sometimes maybe it's not the case, and a therapist is going to just let them know you have to do this, this, and this, but what happened with the wishes of the parents? So it's, again, a whole team work. So in my case, it's working with the families, with the educators, the speech therapy, etc. And then also with the school environment. And I was also thinking before talking to you, the importance of, okay, once this child has misdiagnose, for example, ADHD at school. Also, it's very nice to create kind of awareness at school with the students, just to let them know what is ADHD or autism, just for them to know and support also the child and just to create awareness.
So if we're speaking about children with ADHD, so you're talking about supporting them in school, the teacher then will hopefully support them. But you mentioned there to mention to the other kids, how would you suggest that? And it's obviously going to be different at the different age groups as well in the school. But is there a way that it's meant to be done? Or is there a protocol in the Netherlands that this is how it's meant to be?
To create awareness on the children in classrooms?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a protocol in Netherlands schools, but what I don't know, sometimes children has to do the presentations about a topic. So why not create a topic in the next 2 weeks? That is the Neurodiversity week or any other time of the year. Okay, let's gonna talk about neurodiversity, what it is, and maybe create groups. And every group has to present ADHD. Another group will present autism. Another group will present dyslexia. So they can do maybe role plays to show us what it is. So that every group presents something, so they will be already involved and understanding and just learning themselves about that. So I think that is one of the, instead of me teacher telling you this is ADHD, this is autism, because it's so vague, it's so much information. Instead of make a role play and experience what it is, at least let's try to experience what it is. For example, imagine you have to go to a supermarket and there is a music very loud and a lot of lights. How do you feel in that place? Maybe for me it's okay, but for another child it's gonna be super overwhelmed because of the light, the sound. So just trying to find ideas so they can experience how that can be.
And at home, what would you be suggesting for ADHD specifically?
At home, that will be also depending on the age of your child, already how to talk about emotions, because there may be a lot of frustration. I always have this example of if I'm at school and I'm moving too much, maybe the teacher is going to start putting me a label of, I don't know, any label, and I'm going to keep in my mind, and then I'm going to go home and I'm going to feel bad. So start working on the child in the emotional state, and also trying to support them in creating routines, maybe a big calendar that you as the parent and the child can see. With this week we have to do this, and maybe use a pencil that you have to lay down when it's the task is done. Also, if the child has to do, for example, some task, homework, set a timer, maybe 10-20 minutes, it's enough to stay focused, a calm space, and maybe 10 or 15 minutes of a break where the child can jump around or do anything to regulate himself. Also, be very aware about the sensory stimuli of the child. Maybe your child is very sensitive to lights, to sounds, to smells. So that's also very important to, okay, my child is very overstimulated now. So maybe because of the music, I have to turn it off. Maybe I can do some deep massage to help him, to support him to calm down and relax. Also, if there is a place in your house that you can have to, and I use this with any child, if your child is feeling like angry or frustrated, it's also nice to have a cushion or that the child can hit just to release, or even shout, just to guide the child in the emotional regulation. Also, social clues that we can do, for example, social stories or reading books for, I know that we say that people with ADHD, they have this tendency of interrupting a lot. So maybe practicing that at home in a family setting, so it's also more easy for them to create friends outside the home.
Moving on to autism then. So this is really your foray, as it were. Can you actually explain to us how parents are supporting their children at home with autism?
For autism, it will be, again, depending on the challenge of the child, having a place where the child can be calm and express when he needs, if he needs to hit something, a place if the child likes to line up toys and stuff, a place where he can do that and nobody's going to touch that, because that can create frustration and anger. A place for the parents also to rest when it's needed, support at home. That's also very important. If the parent can count with someone to take care of the child, maybe during the weekends. I do that sometimes during the weekends with the children.
The children from your school?
I work with some families after out of the school. And sometimes I also stay with the weekends with the children during the weekend. That is a way to support the parents also to rest. If the child likes to jump, why not having a trampoline at home to support that? Having also some quality time playing, parent and child. It's very important to create a connection. If you have some noise canceling
Headphones.
that's also very important. If you know that your child is very sensitive to sounds, adapting the space for your child. For example, sometimes if I have to go outside with that child and I know he's going to be stimulated by the sounds, I will take headphones. If I go outside and I see that the child doesn't like, but he's afraid of dogs, okay, I'm going to maybe be more observant. I'm going to change my way. So just having little...
You build up routines of every single thing that's going to help reduce any overstimuli.
Raise awareness. Yeah, raise awareness to just you I guess you just need to learn to scan your environment with that lens on. Okay, this is now the lens. What can I adjust here? How can I make it easier for my child to adapt? What are the skills that we need to take outside? What are the things that we need to take outside because there will be these situations? Or how can we prepare ourselves for this playground visit? Where I is with my daughters, we just walk out the door. We take the situation as it comes. But when you know about this, then you can just take these precautions and make them aware. Let's plan so it's going to be as comfortable as possible because we are leaving our usual environment. So let's prepare. Let's just gather our stuff and make sure you're safe.
Yeah. And again, the tips that I share, I'm thinking about children with an important level of autism. There may be people with autism who can do without all these tips. So it's depending on the challenge you have.
One of the things we discussed prior to the recording is we were chatting about when you bring the children into a playground, and sometimes parents with their children, sometimes we can notice that there's a difference through the overstimulation. There's sometimes screaming, a child is overwhelmed and they could be breaking down, and it kind of stands out. And a lot of parents or young children kind of then tend to look at the child and be like, this is different, I'm uncomfortable. And sometimes the parent then exits the playground with their child saying, well, let's get out of this uncomfortable situation and move away, which detracts from what a normal experience the children you'll be bringing into the playground with, for example, should have. One of the questions I did have was, how can we as parents with currently neurotypical, as there is no issues, thankfully, how can we then open up our worlds? How can we be open and then also helping our children then integrate and see no difference, because children technically don't see anything anyway, and they're just happy to play with whoever's there. But as parents, we're the people who are actually going to be causing the problem. So how can we stop ourselves and actually put ourselves in a place where we could be open, and we can be open to hopefully integrating our children in and also learning more for ourselves?
Yeah, as you say, I think these tasks start with us adults, parents, caregivers, to have the information. So if we say, okay, maybe us as adults know what it is to be neurotypical and also what is being neurodivergent. So neurotypical would be, I had this story, so I thought maybe I want to share this story so it's going to be more easy for us to share with the children. Imagine that there is a huge garden with flowers, and there are many different flowers, different colors, different shapes of petals and smells. And now think about these flowers as brains. So every brain is different. So some brains, they work in this way and other brains will work in another way. So neurodivergent brains, for example, they will have maybe more superpowers. So maybe I'm going to be very good at jumping and drawing and dancing, but I may not be very good at looking at lights. I'm not maybe not be good at smelling smells. I'm going to be very overwhelmed with the shouts. So I know that I can do things very well, but I know that for other things, it's going to be very hard for me to do. And for the children, it's the same thing. So for example, when I go to a playground, the children that I work, they will do different sounds or movements. And what I do, it's if I see a curious face, children faces, I will just approach the child and I will say, oh, the child is happy because he's jumping and moving his hands. So he is happy, just putting words on what the child is seeing. And if I see that the parent is curious, it's okay. Also, I'm very happy to answer question if they want to ask something. And I also ask this question to parents of neurodivergent children. How is the best question for you to receive and feel comfortable to answer? Because I also think that it can be very uncomfortable as a parent to ask to another, what is happening with your child? So what is the kind question to ask? And the answer that I got the most was, if they see people curious about it and they are kind to us, they just can come and ask, always with respect, and also keeping in mind that the parent he is always able to say, I don't want to answer. Just also keep that in mind, that the parents feel he has a boundary also. As an adult, see a child in a playground that you see that he's expressing in an interesting way, you also can share that with your child. Oh, this child has a superpower is the brain, because he's using his hand to express joy, or he uses sounds to express, to speak. I don't know. We really have to try and find our ways to be informed as adults and create awareness with our children.
Most important thing is really putting words to it and building up a vocabulary, how to talk about it. Because as much as I know the feeling when something sticks out and then you don't know, should I address it or not? But of course, always ask yourself, what's the purpose of my question? Why am I asking it? But I think it's good to open up the conversation, because if we don't talk about it, we make it invisible also. And then it's like, oh, that's the child is fine, and then like, let's look at here. But then it's like, okay, we basically negate this experience and make it not visible and make it not a part of, oh, this is totally normal to talk about. This child needs this support, or this is how they, like you said, this is how they express themselves. So children can learn it's okay that this child expressed their joy like that, this child expresses their joy like that, or frustration. So really that children learn that there are different ways to an experience. And that might even help them to discover, oh, and it opens up a conversation. Oh, how do you express joy? How do you say when you're frustrated? What do you say if something's too loud? And then it can take on this whole self-exploration and creating awareness within ourselves, but then of course also for the environment. So I think what you said is really the crucial part of talking about it, open up the conversation and letting really the questions flow to lower the insecurities and the anxiety around this topic. And because we need to be aware, the biggest disabilities that people with different experience, they're not the disabled ones. We as the environment disable them. So we need to be aware of that. It's mostly the environment and not the person who has the problem.
Yeah, I resonate so much with what you just said, because that is what is happening. And if you see, I also hear about some parents that they got this, just an example of how society can support parents with children with the neurodivergent or any other disability. So these parents were buying shoes to his child, very sensitive to sounds, lights, etc. And in this shop, the person was closing the shop for the moment the mom goes with the child to buy the shoes. So of course it was early in the morning. But the parents have the possibility to have that time with the child and buying shoes like any other parent buying shoes to your child, because otherwise it's very difficult. So if we adapt, if we learn, we can make this world better for everyone. And just a tiny thing about the playground, because you also said about us as adults, something that I want to share that you can share with your children. If you try to interact with a child in a playground and you don't receive an answer, it's not because the child doesn't want to answer to you. It's the child wants to keep playing. And I saw that so many times at the playground. Like, I'm with one of the children that I work, and other children come to play with it, ask questions, and they are looking like, why is he not answering? So that is also very interesting to see. So I'm there and telling them, no, the child wants to play. It's a little difficult for the child to answer to you, but he wants to play. I can help you with that.
Mm-hmm.
So not isolating the child.
Speaking about the parents, about supporting parents, can you give us any insight into the parent support group that you lead?
Yeah, so very quickly, last year I was doing the parent support group once per month and with that topic. So we talk about the self-care for parents, puberty, tantrums and meltdowns. I thought this year maybe change the dynamic a little and leave just this open space for the parents so they can share or put a topic on the table and start by that. So this year is in this way. Twice per month, we meet in this place that I told you first at Jordan. It's on Thursdays from 7:30 till 9. We are there, open space to talk about anything. If the parents need guidance, connect with other parents, because and that's also very rich when you see parents that they have the similarities in challenges, or they are looking about this information. Where can I take my child with ADHD? How about the subsidies? So they have the information, but it's not resources in one place, so they can also help themselves in this area. Or do you know any good therapies for this? So that is one's a different story, and the other is at Monty's World, which is the same dynamic, open space, and I'm there to mediate, to listen, to support. And it's always better when you have at least two parents, because you can really see the exchanging and the connection between them. So it's twice per month in two different locations, in West and in Oost. So that also gives the space so if the parents cannot do this date, or if live from too far from Oost or West, there are two different options, so they can join.
And is this group also open? Because I'm just thinking from my own experience that I went to a family member support group where I wasn't the one being affected with the condition, but I found it very helpful. How do I, as a family member, support this other family member who has that condition? So I guess it would also be helpful for grandparents, maybe, oh, my grandchild has this, or we have this in our family. What are books we can read, or what are these things? Or I guess even if my child has best friend and they have this condition, I can, as a other parent, like, okay, when they come over for a play date, what are things that I might be looking out for? If I don't know, maybe sometimes you do have a little, anxiety, like, oh, can I address the parents? Like, because you don't want to come over as ignorant. And so you want to maybe educate yourself about this. So this, I guess, is then also open for someone who wants to be informed because they're dealing with in their environment with someone who needs special support.
Yeah, that too. And thank you to put it out, because yes, if you are a family member, grandparent, caregiver, any person who is around people with neurodivergent adults or children are welcome, because we are all learning from each other. And yes, an uncle, he won't have the same experience as a dad or as a mom. So it's also interesting for them to learn, because you have family meetings during the year. If you're a caregiver, it's always nice to learn about other challenges, because it's just to be informed. So any person who is interested in the topic and who is going to respect also and not judge, what are they going to listen, because that's also very welcome. I also know that can be very scary for a parent go to a parent support group. Already for a neurotypical parent, going to a neurotypical parent support group is challenging, because you may feel afraid, or is people going to judge me? I may be going to be the only one. Leading also parents groups years ago in France, I saw the connection of parents, of just you sharing something. Oh, my child does this, and you see the other man saying, oh, my child does that too, and you see the connection and the joy of, oh, I'm not alone. In this case, it's the same, but I know and I respect and I'm aware about the maybe more fear because of the acceptation process, the mourning process, and just go outside and share. Maybe it's a little more frightening, but I just want to know that there is a place where they can meet, share, talk, safe space, learn from each other. If you want to share your joys, share your tears, which we did also in the last groups, was very beautiful. And it's so nice to see that parents, they can connect after years of not having any connection with a parent on the same journey, and seeing that today is like, wow, tiny connections that can make your experience so different too. Just sharing.
What I found always very helpful in these kind of settings is that when you look from support within your peers, they mostly have very practical support, very like hands-on. I can walk out the door and put this in practice immediately. Whereas sometimes when you talk with professionals, it's very abstract sometimes, or they come with stuff where you're like, oh, okay, I gotta buy this thing, or this is how sometimes a little more complicated, but a parent is very practical. This is the brand we buy, or this is the thing we do. We use a a sock to what, like they come up with very practical things. And that's one thing that I have learned within peer support groups, that you get help and ideas that are immediately executable very quickly. And that's what I found very refreshing.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're looking for more professional support, parents, they always know therapists or
Yeah.
places to go. And even me, I also can share what I know. So it's a sharing and learning together process. But the main thing is that they know that they are not alone in this.
Yeah.
And with that, I'd love for you to actually give us a little bit of information about what you'll be doing next week for the Neurodiversity Week.
Yeah, so Neurodiversity Week, I will be leading 2 events. The first one is the 21st of March at Monty's World from 6:30 to 8. And if we go a little late, it's okay also. So normally that is the day where we do the Neurodivergent Parent Support Group. But for this occasion, it's going to be open for all parents who want to come and learn, because we're going to talk about awareness about the neurodivergent children and adults too. So it will be an open space to listen what they know, what are their fears, what they don't know, what they want to know, how to interact with someone who has a challenge. So it's open space about that. I will be also sharing a book. The book is called Jelly Pie Firefly. It's how to talk about ADHD. So you may know the book.
Our resident psychologist is Dr. Naomi Gibson, so she was involved.
So I'm going to use this book to share a little about ADHD. So it's going to be open place for all parents, adults, caregivers, grandparents, all welcome to share about that and create awareness for us to have words. How can we share this information with our children and share that with them? So it's more just to create awareness. That is the first event, and the other is the 23rd of March at a different story that is in Jordan, and there's going to be an open house from 1 p.m. till 5. So we will do some art and craft. All families are welcome. Neurodivergent, neurotypical families are welcome to share, to learn, to play together, to connect. And we will be reading the Jelly Pie Firefly. And the idea is to both events create awareness about this topic. I'm going to repeat myself, but giving words to adults so we can share this with children, and the children are there doing some also role play games, so also they can learn with their own words what it is to be neurodivergent or neurotypical. So those are the 2 events for the Neurodiversity Week.
That's fantastic. I think you're doing excellent work, because you yourself have just started this last year, as you said, and you're just out there supporting parents, because as international families, we do find it difficult to find where can we go and get support. And most of the support tends to be in Dutch, and it's not exactly very comfortable for us when we have to go and try and figure out our way through a different language, or they have to change for us as well. So this is a fantastic setting that you're creating, an environment that you're creating, and a true part of the community that you really are supporting all the family members out there. Claudia, thank you so much for joining us today. We wish you the very best of luck next week at your next events. We'll be sharing all the links you'll be able to find in the show notes, so you'll be able to find out a lot more about Claudia. Claudia Carter runs the Ludica workshops. All the links will be in the show notes, so make sure you check them out.
Thank you for everyone.
Yeah, super interesting, right? And full circle moment, because as with everything on this podcast that we've heard so far, communication and talking about stuff is the most important thing. So we know we are not alone. And we've said this, I don't know, probably on every single episode where we talked about something, is how important it is that someone feels they are not alone in a situation, and how much weight alone this realization of there is at least one soul out there, hopefully even in my neighborhood or in my city, who is going through something similar, the same, has gone through it, and I can just feel this feeling of relief. I'm not fighting this alone. And I think this is really the most important message in every episode that we do, and especially with topics that are not discussed everywhere and they're coming, like we said, more and more into the mainstream and more into our bubbles and conversations, but they're of course not at a level near where that pops up, not a topic of conversation that is usually brought up super easily and we talk about it and we move on with our day, but it is a topic. Neurodiversity is a topic that is surrounded with a lot of anxiety and fearness and unknown. because we just don't know how it plays out. And especially when we talk about spectrum, right?
Yeah, well, when you come to the spectrum, it's way too big. And the thing is, when people say they're on the spectrum, that literally could be anywhere from all the way from white all the way to black, and there's like so many variations, like 50 shades of gray, as some might say.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's so many different levels of it. And the problem was this wasn't really properly diagnosed like in the 20th century, because it was like, you have a problem child, or this is your issue. And the funny thing is like, I've noticed in the last like 40 years of my own life, like certain people act different ways and they cope, and they have to build up these coping mechanisms. For example, with ADHD, I mean, it is well known that females are not diagnosed at the same time as boys, because girls will learn to mask it differently. So they only tend to get diagnosed much later. There's a lot of changes, and thankfully in the last 10 years or so, things have come a little better and a little easier, but still there's a lot of work to do. And as international families, the whole episode reason really is down to the fact that we wanted to showcase that there are support groups out there, part of our community, that where you can meet other people. This is about meeting your peers, learning from your peers, connecting to people, other families, and equally people who are open to learning more about something that they might be fortunate not to actually have within their family. But at the same time, as Maren was saying earlier, you correctly pointed out, your daughter's best friend might have it, for example. And it's a case of, it's a great way to just figure out, what would be a good play date, even like, can I just learn from like, what's a good thing? One thing I did want to say was, I don't know how many years ago it was, I do remember that supermarkets started developing autism hours. So they would actually turn down the lights. Right? Yeah. So they would have like, the lights were turned down low. There was no music. They even turned off the beep at the cash registers, all of this. And it was also reduced people in as well. Different people have different ways of doing it. And I think it's a great thing if we can all start figuring out, how can we actually help support that a bit more? How can we do something as well? Because without it, we're forcing families to integrate into our society that way. And they're having to go then through the traumas that their child are going to have to basically go through and basically learn to cope. Whereas we should also be embracing them and saying, well, actually, we'll also provide a space and a time for them so that they'll be able to enjoy it in themselves to the fullest.
Yeah. And like I said in the episode or in the interview, is that the environment is mostly the part that disables these people. So I am part of the environment. So how can I minimize my own impact of the disability to that child? And I think that is something, why would you not do that? Right.
Yeah.
So I think that awareness is key. Talking about it is key. Realizing you're never alone with a situation, and you can seek out for help and you can seek out for support. Just feel connected with your peers and with experiences and share them. And yeah, it's a wealth of resources that are shared within these communities. So don't be afraid, especially also, like Eva said, even if you have not been in contact with this topic, your child is going to school, and there's a very high chance that within these hundreds of children, there is for sure someone who has some kind of diversity in whatever spectrum that is. So they are around us, and we need to be, I think it's a part of our societal duty to be aware of that and to minimize our own impact on that.
The only thing is, and reverting back to last week's episode with perfectionism, is don't think you have to do all of it and you have to explain every single thing quickly and now because I have to do it. But it's a case of, in bibliotherapy, for example, if you want to help your child to understand a bit more, they need to first meet someone with whatever it is, a disability or a condition or whatever it might be. And then you introduce the book to then help them explain. So don't feel the perfectionistic thing of, oh, quick, do everything. My child needs to know everything quickly. But do take your time and, be open. And the biggest part is not being judgmental and being open. And I think that's actually the hardest thing for even us as adults, will be to then remove that as well, and to go in open and, open to learn, open to be part of it, and open to be part of even the support.
Yeah. And with that, we'll wrap this one up. You can hear us every Wednesday. We're coming out with an expert episode about a topic that has up within the community that we invited an expert on to speak about. Every Monday, Eva and I are chatting it away in the damn chats about a topic that in our private life has occurred, and we just wanted to sit down and have a conversation. You can hear this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We are also on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts from. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode, especially this episode. Share it with someone that you think this might be helpful for, and they can get a source of connection and they can get resources out of this episode. Make sure you activate the bell in your podcast player so you get a notification when we're dropping another episode. You can also find us on Instagram, Damn Parenting Podcast, and we're happy for every support that we can get from you and hear you on the next episode. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.